It happened faster than I could brace myself. One moment I was standing still in the center of the ballroom, my fingers clutching the envelope that held my inheritance check. The next, there was glass in my hair, champagne soaking through my dress, and 150 stunned faces staring at me. "You're a disgrace to this family. A failure." My father's voice sliced through the classical music like a blade, right before the bottle shattered against my shoulder. For a full second no one moved. Not my mother, who stood like a wax figure by the buffet table. Not my sister, the bride, glowing in lace and cruelty. Not the guests, who gasped and whispered behind manicured hands and wine-stained lips. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. I just stood there, glass crunching under my heels, eyes locked on the man who had just humiliated me in front of everyone. All because I wouldn't sign over the money. Money my late grandmother had left me, not them. Not the family who had spent years reminding me I was the unwanted middle child. Not the father who only remembered I existed when he needed a signature. "You were supposed to hand it over," he shouted again, spittle flying, his face a shade redder than the burgundy drapes. I looked around. Still no one stepped in. Not even the groom. Not the distant cousins. Not even the childhood friend who used to braid my hair and now looked away in shame. And I smiled. Not a sweet smile. Not a smile of surrender. No. It was the kind of smile that warned a storm was coming. I tucked the envelope back into my purse, smoothed my ruined hair and turned away from the blood running down my arm. I walked past the stunned guests, past my mother's horrified expression, past the shocked murmurs and awkward clinks of dropped silverware. And I didn't look back. Not even once. But I did hear my sister whisper, "She'll come back. She always does." She had no idea. That night I didn't cry into a pillow. I didn't retreat to some dark room to lick my wounds. I sat on my balcony in silence, a frozen bag of peas pressed against my bruised shoulder, while the city lights blinked like tiny betrayals in the distance. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't touched in 6 years. He answered on the first ring. "You still owe me a favor," I said flatly. There was a pause. Then a low chuckle. "I wondered when you'd call." I didn't explain. I didn't need to. I just said, "Make the arrangements. I want it done within 48 hours. "Done," he replied. "You want to tell me what they did?" "No," I said, cold and tired. "You'll see it on the news." The next morning my father woke up to his personal assistant in tears, screaming that every one of his accounts had been frozen due to an emergency audit. My mother's luxury boutique had been locked by the IRS, and the groom, my sister's new husband, had been slapped with a federal restraining order banning him from 3 different properties. But that was just the beginning. They hadn't even seen what I'd saved for the wedding after-party. By sunset the next day my father's empire, which he had built with arrogance, ego and borrowed money, was unraveling thread by thread. And not a single soul knew I was behind it. I didn't need to break into his accounts. I didn't need to plant anything illegal. No, I knew him better than anyone else, his habits, his shortcuts, his dirty little accounting tricks. All I did was send the right documents to the right agencies. Quietly. Anonymously. Let the paper trail speak. But revenge, true revenge, isn't about money. It's not even about justice. It's about watching someone who thought you were nothing suddenly realize you were holding the detonator all along. And that moment came that night. At the wedding after-party. The ballroom had been reset, brighter now with glowing chandeliers and golden roses, but the energy had changed. My sister walked in hand with her husband, beaming like a queen. My mother followed close behind in pearls she didn't pay for. And my father, now cleaned up and composed as if he hadn't shattered a bottle on his own daughter, led the way. I was already there, of course, standing near the champagne tower, in a navy gown with a low back and a diamond pin glinting in my hair. Not a single guest recognized me, at least not at first. Not until I smiled. Then mouths fell open. "Wait, is that?" She came back. "What the hell is she doing here?" I didn't wait for the whispers to die down. I stepped forward, picked up a glass of champagne and clinked it gently with a knife. The music stopped. Eyes turned. And I spoke. "Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. And for witnessing something truly special. See, it's not every day a family gets to celebrate love and betrayal in the same room." There were laughs. Nervous ones. The kind that fall flat when no one knows if it's a joke or a bomb about to drop. My sister stepped forward, pale beneath her makeup. What are you doing? I raised the glass, unbothered. Making a toast. You don't mind, do you? After all, you did invite me. My father growled. You're not welcome here. Leave. Now. But I only smiled. I will. Just as soon as I return something to its rightful owner. From my clutch, I pulled out a folded piece of paper. My grandmother's original will. The one they thought was lost. The one that had mysteriously disappeared weeks before her funeral. I held it up. I kept a copy, I said softly. And I submitted it to the courts yesterday. A heavy silence fell. You, what? My mother whispered. I nodded. Turns out, the version of the will you all paraded around? The one where she left everything to you three? The forge. And that signature at the bottom? Yeah. That wasn't hers. But this one is. I handed it to a courier standing at the door. You'll all be receiving legal notifications tomorrow. Consider this my wedding gift. Gasps. One woman fainted. My sister dropped her bouquet. And my father? He charged. But someone stepped between us. A man in a dark suit. My lawyer. The one they hadn't recognized until now. Touch her again, he said, cool as winter, and this time it's you who won't walk away. I turned on my heel and left the room to stunned silence and the distant sound of a woman sobbing behind a veil of roses. But I wasn't done. The real storm hadn't even started. By noon the next day the storm had a name. My headlines popped up like wildfire across every local business site, then national ones. Billionaire's daughter accuses family of forgery in shocking wedding bombshell. Inheritance scandal. Private will revealed during live reception toast. Bride's sister stuns 150 guests with legal bomb. Was the estate stolen? But the media only saw the tip of it. What they didn't know, what even I hadn't fully planned, was how fast everything would come crashing down once that will entered the system. My grandmother had been smarter than any of them gave her credit for. She knew the wolves were circling her when she got sick. So she signed her will in private with witnesses in front of her own estate attorney. She gave me the original copy and hid the rest. And the woman I'd called last night? The one who picked up on the first ring? That was Mrs. Tamsin, her lawyer. The same one my family thought had retired. She hadn't. She'd just been waiting. By mid-afternoon, my father's bank accounts had been seized pending investigation. By 4 o'clock the IRS raided his office. And by 5, a court clerk arrived at my mother's boutique with an order to vacate the premises. The building? It had never belonged to her. It was mine. Left to me by my grandmother in the real will. When she called me screaming, "How dare you take my store from me?" I didn't shout back. I simply said, "It was never yours to begin with. You just dressed it in pearls and pretended." She hung up in tears. My sister was worse. She'd spent her wedding night crying in a luxury suite, calling every contact she had, begging for a way to reverse the court's decision. But there wasn't one. The will was legal. The lawyer was legitimate. And the notary had already given their sworn testimony. She tried to post a picture of us as kids, me hugging her after she broke her arm, to make the world pity her. But the comments destroyed her. You watched your dad hit her and said nothing. You stole her inheritance. You're not the victim. Blood doesn't mean family. Actions do. By morning her modeling deal was cancelled. Her brand deal dropped her. Her husband, he tried to delete every photo they had together and issue a public statement pretending he'd never met me. Unfortunately for him, he had. I waited exactly 48 hours. Then I uploaded the clip. Just a 30-second video, taken by a friend, of him and me in college. His hand on my leg. His lips on my neck. The same man who once said I was too broke to matter, now trying to act like we never existed. The internet ate him alive. Wait, is this the same guy from the wedding video? Bro, she gave you a chance and you married her sister? Plot twist of the year. He deleted his account. My father, he broke first. A man like him doesn't know how to survive when the ground beneath him isn't shaking for others. But for him, he tried to call. I didn't answer. He emailed. I didn't respond. He showed up outside my apartment. Begging. Wearing the same suit he hit me in. Please, he rasped. We can fix this. I opened the door, looked him in the eyes and said nothing. He wept. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. And that was better. They say money changes people. But the truth is, money reveals people. And when the inheritance surfaced with my name written across every line, paragraph, and signature, what it revealed was brutal. My mother, who once kissed my forehead before bed, who taught me to curl my hair for school dances, turned into a bitter stranger clawing for control. My sister, who used to write me notes in crayon, grew venomous when she realized no amount of wedding spotlight could outshine the truth. And my father? He didn't even bother pretending. His mask fell off the moment the champagne bottle slipped from his hand. After the will became public, things changed fast. I didn't press charges for the assault. Not because I forgave him, but because I wanted him to live with the guilt. To watch himself unravel. To feel powerless in a world where he once barked and people bowed. And I didn't need prison to destroy him. No. That kind of man self-destructs the moment his image cracks. 3 days later, his office building was auctioned off. Not quietly. Not discreetly. I made sure of that. I bought it through a third-party buyer, repainted the entire facade in white stone and clean glass, and turned it into a shelter for women escaping abusive homes. We named it The Haven. At the opening ceremony, reporters asked if I had anything to say to the previous owner. I smiled at the camera and said, "Tell him his building finally has a purpose." The clip went viral. But behind the headlines, the real shift was personal. I started sleeping with my phone on silent for the first time in years. No more late-night insults disguised as concern. No more passive-aggressive family group chats. No more being told I was too emotional, too stubborn, too selfish just for standing my ground. For the first time, I breathed. And then came the letter. It was from a woman named Lorraine in Michigan. She'd watched the news, seen my face, read my story. And she wrote, "I was disowned for saying no to. You don't know me, but I just wanted to say, thank you. For showing the world that women like us aren't broken. We're just done being quiet." I cried when I read it. Not because I was sad. But because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. Then came the calls. Journalists. Advocacy groups. Schools. Podcasts. Everyone wanted my story. But I wasn't interested in repeating it for applause. I wanted to rebuild, not just buildings but women's lives. I launched a foundation in my grandmother's name. Lillian's Light. We offered legal help for those cut out unfairly. Counseling for women bruised by family expectations. Scholarships for girls who were told, "You're just not enough." And one day, while overseeing renovations at a newly donated property, my phone buzzed. It was a message from someone I hadn't expected. My younger cousin. "You probably don't want to hear from me. But I saw what you did. And I'm sorry I didn't speak up. I wish I had. If you'll let me, I'd like to help." And for the first time, I said yes. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. But it can mean moving forward. They used to say I was the quiet one. The one who didn't fight back. Didn't talk too much. Didn't make a scene. What they didn't realize was that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means I was watching. Bernie. Waiting. And when I finally made my move, it wasn't loud. It was devastatingly precise. 6 weeks after the wedding, the one that turned into a public collapse of my family's empire, I was invited to speak at a private women's conference in Chicago. The theme? Redefining legacy. I didn't want to go at first. I wasn't a public speaker. I wasn't used to standing in front of polished crowds and explaining why the people who were supposed to love me had thrown me to the wolves. But something inside me said, "You have to." Because if I didn't speak, someone else in the audience might be sitting there, just like I had all those years, convincing herself that keeping the peace was more important than her own voice. When I stepped up to the podium, the lights were soft. The room was full of women, CEOs, activists, single moms, college students. Every type. Every story. I took a breath, looked at them and said, "My father hit me in front of 150 people. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence. The clinking of glasses. The averted eyes. The way my mother blinked and looked away. The way my sister smirked. And the way I stood there, frozen, not because I was afraid, but because I realized in that moment I was alone. But not anymore. There was a pause. And then they stood. All of them. I didn't ask for applause. But it happened anyway. That night, I received 219 messages in my inbox. Stories. Confessions. Cries for help. One girl wrote. I was planning to sign the deed to my apartment over to my brother tomorrow. They say I'm the burden. But after hearing you, I'm keeping what's mine. Thank you for reminding me I'm allowed. That message shook me. As I was her. Once. Meanwhile, back home, my parents were unraveling. The court had ordered my father to pay back over $2.4 million in misappropriated assets from my grandmother's estate. His luxury car was repossessed. The country club revoked his membership. My mother tried to appeal the store closure, claiming emotional distress. The judge rejected it. You forged your mother-in-law's signature, he said bluntly. Distress was the result of your own actions. She didn't speak to the press after that. As for my sister, she moved to Miami with her husband, trying to escape the backlash. But once a video's out, it doesn't go away. She ended up working part-time in retail, trying to salvage a fashion brand that no longer had a platform. We didn't talk again until 8 months later. It was winter. I was standing outside Lillian's Light, watching a group of women carry boxes of food and winter coats into the lobby. A car pulled up behind me. My sister stepped out. No makeup. No filters. Just her. She looked different. Smaller somehow. I know I'm the last person you want to see, she said quietly. But I came to say something. I waited. She looked down. I let it happen. That day at the wedding, I saw Dad raise the bottle and I didn't stop him. Because deep down I thought you'd always be fine. You always got back up. But I shouldn't have let you fall alone. I didn't say anything for a long time. Because what do you say to someone who once laughed when you bled? But I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time in years I saw no competition. No jealousy. No cruelty. Just a girl, tired of pretending. So I said, if you want to change, do something that matters. She nodded. And I walked back inside. Months passed. I kept building. By the end of the year, Lillian's Light had opened 3 more centers across the state. We'd helped over 1,200 women. I was no longer just the girl with the ruined dress and a bottle-shaped scar on her shoulder. I was something more. Something my family never expected. I was a name people whispered with respect. A name my grandmother would have been proud of. And one rainy afternoon, as I stood inside my office, finalizing grant paperwork, a courier arrived. A box. No return label. Inside was an envelope. And inside the envelope, a single sentence typed on white paper. You made me proud. Lillian. My eyes filled. I knew it wasn't real. My grandmother had been gone nearly 2 years. But someone had written it. Maybe her lawyer. Maybe her caretaker. Maybe someone she told before the end. But in that moment it didn't matter who sent it. What mattered was that I felt her. Her strength. Her fire. Her legacy. Living in me. So to the girl reading this now. The one who's been told she's selfish for saying no. The one who's called ungrateful for not giving more. The one who's been told to just be quiet. Let me say this. You are not a disgrace. You are not a failure. You are not a burden. You're just done being silenced. And trust me, they'll regret ever trying to silence you.